are increasingly conducted here in New York, which means political hardball very often around the head and the knees. The New York State primary is 1 week from today. There's no doubting its importance now to the overall Democratic campaign for the presidency. For Governor Clinton and former Governor Jerry Brown, they may well find the next 7 days the longest week of the year. Our first reporter is from ABC's Chris Bury.
Today, Governor Clinton took a break from campaigning long enough to see a doctor about his sore throat.
He gave me some exercises and some advice. It was fine.
Clinton's health may be the least of his worries. Consider the reaction to Sunday's debate when Clinton revealed that years ago he tried marijuana but never inhaled. That answer has become fodder for columnists and comedians alike.
Didn't inhale.
It popped up at last night's Oscar ceremony.
Come on.
Even the Wall Street Journal took note. But it is the New York tabloids which have had a field day with Clinton. They routinely refer to him as Slick Willie.
Bill Clinton reminds a lot of New Yorkers of the guys who try to sell them stereo equipment, inside and outside of stores.
Then there are the hecklers who interrupt Clinton wherever cameras go, as they did again last night. Clinton is clearly fed up.
And I've been a punching bag in New York and all across this country.
All this has led Clinton to change tactics. Last week, he said there had been enough debates. Now, sensing trouble, he is challenging Jerry Brown to more joint appearances, like today's forum on urban issues with big city mayors. The best way to sell himself, Clinton believes, is to talk policy and point up his differences with Brown.
So what I'm trying to do is to say to the voters of New York, here I am, I'm not hiding. If you like me half as much as I like New York, you'll vote for me.
Today, Clinton began running new commercials that defined character on his terms.
He stood up to the tabloids, the false attacks, told the truth, and shown real character.
Clinton also plans to spend time in places like Buffalo and Albany, away from the tabloid war zone. His campaign knows that Michael Dukakis won this state 4 years ago, even while losing New York City to Jesse Jackson. Chris Bury, ABC News, New York.
There are Democratic leaders today who do not think that comparison with 1988 applies. As ABC's Jim Wooten reports tonight, the party professionals are very worried.
Listen to Bill Clinton a month ago in Denver.
And the way this contest is going, the last person on his feet will be the nominee of the Democratic Party.
Now, in New York, he and Governor Brown are the last ones standing. But while hardly anyone sees Brown as a serious contender for the nomination,
I think he's flaky. He's Governor Moonbeam.
he could be a serious threat to Clinton's nomination.
I don't try to make any claim that every thought of mine is original. This is a We the People movement.
In that spirit, he either admits negative stories are true or says he's changed or says it doesn't matter. What matters, he says, is that the system is corrupt and politicians like Clinton won't change it. It's an effective message.
The most important thing that Jerry Brown has going for him in New York is that he's not Bill Clinton. And I think that his vote will be nothing more than a message sent that a certain number of Democrats can't tolerate Clinton.
Party leaders are concerned now that because of Brown, Clinton may stumble here in New York and in future primaries, falling short of the delegates required for the nomination before the convention begins. That would mean a bloody floor fight, perhaps the rise of another candidate, or a fatally wounded Clinton as the nominee, none of which the party wants as a kickoff to the fall campaign. The concern is that while Clinton has a comfortable delegate lead, he also leads the polls in the number of voters who don't trust him. That has Clinton worried and the party leaders very, very nervous. Jim Wooten, ABC News, New York.
In a moment, we'll have some of the day's other news. The Supreme Court limits federal supervision of school desegregation. On the American agenda tonight, the recession limits California's campaign against smoking. And finally this evening, how to take a car apart in 10 minutes, 19 seconds.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Lexus.
All cars are made with sheets of metal. But one of these sheets is actually a sandwich of steel, resin, and steel used by Lexus to help quiet the cabin of the LS 400. Care to guess which one?
Knock out the flea and tick problem for good. Hit him with the old 1-2 combination punch from Hartz. Get rid of them with the Hartz 2-in-1 Rib Flea Shampoo. Those tough bubbles knock out fleas and ticks while leaving Rocky looking and smelling like a champ. Follow through with the Hartz 2-in-1 Collar. It stops fleas and ticks dead for up to 5 months, even if it gets wet. Hartz 2-in-1 Rib Flea Shampoo and a Hartz 2-in-1 Collar. That's the Hartz 1-2 punch. It's murder on fleas and ticks. Hartz, everything good for your pet.
The Supreme Court has backed away from federal involvement in school desegregation. The question before the court was, does a school system already under a court order to desegregate have an obligation to take further steps to end segregation caused only by the changing racial makeup of the neighborhood? Without dissent today, the court said no. And here's our law correspondent, Tim O'Brien.
The school that Anwar Williams goes to in DeKalb County, Georgia, is nearly all black. As more blacks moved into the county and more whites moved out, predominantly black schools like Anwar's became common. Anwar's parents and others sued, demanding more money and more teachers for the black school. But the county said it had already fully complied with court-ordered desegregation. Today, the Supreme Court ruled school boards have no duty to stop segregation caused only by voluntary housing patterns. Justice Anthony Kennedy for the court. It is beyond the authority and the practical ability of the federal courts to try to counteract these kinds of continuous and massive demographic shifts. Today's ruling also makes it easier for school systems to get out from under federal court supervision, even when segregation is the result of intentional discrimination. School systems around the country are under federal court orders to desegregate students, faculty, and staff. They must also ensure equal access to transportation, school activities, and facilities. Until integration was achieved in all areas, the federal courts had retained total control. A key part of today's ruling now allows school officials to achieve those goals one by one and take back control one area at a time.
I think when we achieve the credibility, when the trust level goes up, everyone will agree this was a good day.
Reagan and Bush appointments have made the Supreme Court more conservative, and the lawyer representing black parents in Georgia said that was a factor.
We have a less sympathetic forum in which to fight. The ring is tougher now, our opponents are tougher, the court is much less sympathetic, but the fight is by no means all over, and we shouldn't give up.
In various opinions, all of the justices expressed hostility to intentional racial discrimination, but there appears a growing consensus among them that unless that intent can be proved, the federal courts should stay out of the public schools. Tim O'Brien, ABC News, Washington.
In Indianapolis today, the State Court of Appeals has denied the boxer Mike Tyson's request to be freed from prison while he appeals his sentence. They gave no reason. And inside, prison officials are warning that Tyson may get less time off for good behavior unless he stops signing autographs. The autographs apparently violate a rule against giving other inmates anything of value. On Capitol Hill tonight, new leadership of the House of Representatives Post Office, and a new report about the post office from government investigators, which could further embarrass the House leadership. Here's ABC's Cokie Roberts.
The House of Representatives got a new postmaster today.
Do you solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States?
Postal Executive Michael Chenet was sworn in as results of a new audit revealed that problems at the House Post Office are far from over. In a surprise audit last week, the General Accounting Office found an unlocked vault stacked with 100 money orders totaling $75,000 that could have been taken, signed, and cashed by anyone. The report also talks about personal and public money mixed together and employees unfamiliar with handling stamps and cash. An earlier audit of the post office last spring turned up widespread abuses, which led to the indictments of 4 postal workers for embezzlement. A federal grand jury is continuing that investigation and looking at whether House officials attempted to cover up the embezzlement. The new audit at the post office could not come at a worse time for House Democrats. They've been trying to focus voter attention on the perks and privileges enjoyed by the White House. Instead, they keep getting plagued with problems of their own that won't go away. Cokie Roberts, ABC News, Capitol Hill.
Economic news today, the government index that is supposed to forecast where the economy is heading pointed up last month. The index of leading economic indicators was up 0.8%. Consumer confidence is also up. The Conference Board, which conducts business research, says its index of consumer confidence rose 7 points in March, and that is the biggest gain in a year. Many companies, however, are still pulling in their belts. Sears Roebuck says it will lay off 2,000 more workers this year, half of them at its Chicago headquarters. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrials gained just a fraction of a point to close at 32.35, and the trading was moderate. In a moment, sanctions against Libya. What will they accomplish?
It's here, Domino's new, better-tasting pizza.
More melted cheese, big batter toppings, tender, tastier crust. More melted cheese, big batter toppings,
Tender, tastier crust. From this day on, every Domino's pizza is going to be better than ever.
Nobody knows like Domino's how you like more melted cheese, big batter toppings, tender, tastier crust.
Try a medium with unlimited toppings, now just $9.99. Another $4 more.
I need a laxative that can work dependably.
Doxidan can.
But can it be gentle?
Doxidan can. Doxidan works dependably overnight with a special ingredient for gentle relief.
Dependable, yes. Gentle, yes.
Doxidan can.
I live in the country where everything tastes a little sweeter and a little fresher. Maybe that's what I like best about these Sunsweet pitted prunes. I can taste all that goodness in Sunsweet.
The Isuzu Trooper
Right on time.
has been thoughtfully redesigned to include a new suspension system,
Honey, pothole.
I see it.
giving it an incredibly smooth, quiet ride on the road as well as off. Of course, these days, what's the difference?
At the United Nations today, a decision to increase international pressure on Libya. The Security Council has voted to impose economic sanctions against Libya because Libya has not yet handed over the 6 men accused in the terrorist bombings of Pan Am Flight 103 and a French airliner that blew up over Africa. The sanctions include an air blockade and an arms embargo. The Libyans were apparently prepared for worse. Here's ABC's Sheila McVicker.
On Libyan television tonight, a newscaster described the Security Council's sanctions as extreme, unjust, and punitive. But Libyans were not told exactly what measures will be imposed. Middle East analysts say these sanctions will cause Libyans inconvenience rather than hardship.
The sanctions are not being imposed because they're going to damage the Libyan economy. They're being imposed because of their symbolic value.
The air blockade means people will not be able to fly directly to Libya, but they will be able to drive from neighboring countries or take a ferry across the Mediterranean. The embargo on arms sales will also have little effect. Libya's small army has stockpiles of equipment for at least 8 months. The Libyans themselves have been planning for all this since last fall, when the American and British governments announced they wanted the Pan Am suspects handed over. In fact, Libya is prepared for even more severe sanctions than those adopted by the Security Council.
What Libya is particularly worried about is a complete UN oil embargo, similar to the one that's been imposed on Iraq.
To combat that, production in Libyan oil fields has been increased. Excess production is now being stored in Libyan-owned facilities in Europe. They have made other plans, too. Stockpiles of food and medicine have been increased. In case their bank accounts were frozen, Libya moved more than $1 billion in cash to friendly banks in the Gulf state of Bahrain. And Libya has asked its oil customers to pay in currency other than American dollars.
Dollars have to be processed through the United States, and of course the Libyans were worried that this avenue would be frozen.
Diplomats say the sanctions adopted today will be difficult to monitor and hard to enforce. If Libya's Colonel Gaddafi ignores the message behind these sanctions, it is possible the Security Council will be asked to impose more severe measures. Sheila McVicker, ABC News, London.
There was another accusation against Libya today. The tiny African nation of Gambia says that Libya has been arming and training a guerrilla force intended to invade Gambia and overthrow the government. A victory for Boris Yeltsin today in his effort to keep Russia itself from coming apart. The Russian Federation is made up of 20 separate ethnic regions. Today, 18 of them signed an agreement in which they will remain part of Russia, though they will have more control over their individual affairs. The 2 regions which boycotted the meeting happen to have a lot of oil. and they want even more independence. In electoral politics overseas, evidence of incumbents in trouble everywhere. In France, the ruling socialists are scrambling to get their act together after losing a couple of important parliamentary elections. In Britain, a parliamentary election 9 days from now, in which the governing Conservative Party faces the possibility of defeat. Here's ABC's Pierre Salinger.
British election campaigns are short, 4 weeks, but they look more and more like American campaigns. The candidates travel across the country, mostly in search of the kind of setting that will get them on television. Prime Minister John Major of the Conservative Party sharply attacks his Labour Party opponents for their plan to raise national taxes. Labour leader Neil Kinnock says taxes have to be raised because the Conservatives have starved public services like health care and education.
After 13 years in power, the Conservative Party is facing its toughest election. Accused by the opposition of having created the worst recession in Great Britain since the end of World War II.
At first, Margaret Thatcher's anti-union pro-business policies led to greater prosperity. But over the last 2 years, high interest rates have caused thousands of people to lose their homes because they cannot pay their mortgages. The increased number of homeless grew obvious in the streets, and unemployment climbed to nearly 10%. It is still rising.
Not only are we in the longest recession since the 1930s, we're now in a recession which is going deeper. And the appalling thing is, too, that the government is doing absolutely nothing about it.
When John Major replaced Mrs. Thatcher, he inherited the public's grievances over the economy. But he argues that even if unemployment is high and the economy is in bad shape, Labor's high tax proposals would make the economy worse.
There is in this election absolutely no reason at all for any unemployed person to vote Labour unless they want to stay unemployed.
Even if most voters blame the Conservative Party for the problems of the economy, Major has one advantage. Neil Kinnock, his main opponent, remains one of the most unpopular of the top politicians in the country. Under those circumstances, it is possible that neither John Major nor Neil Kinnock will get a majority, something that could launch a second national election before the end of the year. Pierre Salinger, ABC News, London.
When we come back, the American agenda for today. California's war on smoking runs into difficulty.
The real problem with heartburn isn't putting it out, it's keeping it out. Introducing new Maalox Heartburn Relief Formula. It doesn't just stop the burning, it actually helps keep it from coming back. New Maalox Heartburn Relief Formula. It could start in your office, in your home, over lunch. But now, wherever heartburn starts, this is where it ends. Introducing new Maalox Heartburn Relief Formula. No ordinary antacid works like this one to put out heartburn.
Don't get hit by an annual fee. Carry the card that doesn't charge one. And keep yourself out of the hole. It pays to discover.
Hot coffee and steak in front of strangers at 30,000 feet? Not with my old adhesive.
Fixident holds stronger than any other adhesive. It even stands up to the hottest liquids.
Now I Fixident and forget it.
Welcome to a world of new ideas from Goodyear. Welcome to the tire that's changing all-season driving. Goodyear AquaTread. To the new Goodyear Eagle GS Ultra Performance radios. To the new leading-edge Goodyear Wrangler GSA radio for light trucks. Welcome to all of the new ideas at Goodyear. Come and discover why we say the best tires in the world have Goodyear written all over them.
You've just poured yourself a bowl of Kellogg's Crispix. When?
Hello? Mom, what a surprise. Well, actually, my cereal's sitting in milk.
When will you get back to your Kellogg's Crispix? It's anybody's guess.
Uh-huh. But they wouldn't give your money back?
Fortunately, Kellogg's Crispix stays crisp and delicious in milk.
I'm sure Aunt Helen didn't mean it that way.
Even if you can't get to it right away.
Uh-huh. Still crispy. You're absolutely right, Mom.
Kellogg's Crispix, the taste that waits for you.
We've put smoking on the American agenda tonight. There are still more than 50 million smokers in America, more than 400,000 of whom die every year because of their habit. We've put the subject of smoking back on the agenda because of an initiative in California that has been extremely successful encouraging smokers to quit. And then along came the recession, Our agenda reporter is Beth Nissen.
It was one of the most ambitious public health programs ever attempted anywhere, to get 75% of all smokers in California to quit by the end of the decade.
Throughout the country, people die because they smoke cigarettes. But in California, the constituency, the public organized to do something about that.
What California voters did in 1988 was pass Proposition 99, which raised the tax on cigarettes by 25 cents a pack. That tax established an anti-smoking war chest of $80 million in the first year. And this was the first target, advertisements encouraging people to smoke. The state produced a series of state-of-the-art anti-smoking ads, ads targeted at the young.
Listen up, young people. Hey, tobacco kills.
Ads targeted at those most at risk. And most controversial, ads targeted at the tobacco industry.
Gentlemen, we're not in this business for our health.
The tobacco industry, which had already spent millions of dollars in a failed effort to defeat Proposition 99, stepped up its efforts to defend the right to smoke.
25% of the adult population in California are smokers. They deserve representation.
The fight was on for smokers' hearts and minds. Using cigarette tax money, the state started hundreds of community-based tobacco education programs for pregnant women and women with children,
Heart cancer and heart disease,
programs for children themselves, programs for those in the workplace.
We're glad you're here. We're glad that you're glad I'm here.
And for smokers motivated to stop, the state funded free stop-smoking clinics like this one in Los Angeles. After the campaign's first year, researchers at the University of California measured its results, and the early findings were remarkable.
We've shown that almost half of the people in California who smoke cigarettes attempted to quit last year.
And 750,000 Californians succeeded. 750,000 smokers quit in the first year. But now, much of what has been gained may go up in smoke. The state government, facing a massive budget deficit, is cutting funding for virtually every program, including the anti-smoking campaign. The plan is to divert $60 million in anti-smoking funds over the next 2 years and use that money for the care of pregnant women and children. The diversion itself has angered many who thought that money was designated by law for the war on smoking. And the first proposed cuts prompted a statewide outcry. Among other anti-smoking programs, the media campaign will get no new funding.
The media campaign is the heart of the whole program. The media campaign is what raises the public awareness that gets people interested in the community-based programs.
The state's director of health services says the cuts were made judiciously.
Our sense was that we could temporarily halt and then resume a media campaign where if we cut the community groups and they disband, it would take years to build them back again.
Many activists say that sidesteps the fact that the tobacco industry spent millions to extinguish the most visible part of the anti-smoking campaign.
Cigarettes are tremendously profitable, and they're not going to walk away from those profits without fighting to the death.
Despite setbacks, California's anti-smoking initiative has already made a vital point that smokers can be persuaded and helped to quit.
Over time, the tobacco industry will lose this battle. The tragedy is that the longer it takes, the more people will be damaged and the more people will die from tobacco use.
Beth Nissen for the American Agenda in Sacramento.
And we'll be back in just a moment.
Now arriving, track 14.
Imagine, every day, everywhere you go, with every step you take, a pillowy cushion of softness. That's Dr. Scholl's unique 2-layer air pillow insoles. 1 layer for shock, 1 for comfort. Dr. Scholl's air pillow insoles. You'll feel better when the doctor is in.
Ordinary pickles are cooked and limp. Not Clausen. They're packed fresh and stored cold. So they're always crisp and delicious. Taste the difference. Cold, crisp, Clausen.
My Granny's spaghetti recipe. With ordinary grated topping? Oops. Some are 1/3 fats and fillers, but Kraft is 100% grated Parmesan for 100% great taste. Granny would approve.
Royal Caribbean. Turquoise seas surround you. Gentle breezes come to play. Our Caribbean calls you. Where your cares just melt away.
Outstanding service. One reason we're the world's largest cruise line. Royal Caribbean, the grand resorts of the seven seas.
Royal Caribbean.
Tonight on Nightline, it's like a new Typhoid Mary, the case of a Philadelphia man who may have infected hundreds with AIDS. Is the city overreacting? Tonight.
Finally from us this evening, if you had your car stolen recently, whether you have or not, we think you will find a show and tell on Capitol Hill today instructive. It was organized by some congressmen and the automobile insurance industry. We'll get to their point in just a minute. This is an ordinary 1990 Cadillac, worth, we are told, $21,000. As you watch these three legitimate mechanics go to work on it, imagine for a moment this is your car being taken apart on a back street or a back lot. You don't have a Cadillac? Whatever you have, the parts are valuable.
Okay, just after 4 minutes, and here goes the front assembly. Here goes the driver's door. Just past 6 minutes now.
And the whole rear bumper is gone. And here's the point. Tracing stolen automobile parts in the back streets of American cities is almost as hard as finding illegal weapons in Iraq. The wheels. The seats. What the congressmen and the insurance industry are trying to get is a new consumer law that would give every single automobile part of value an identity number, which they believe would make it more difficult to sell the parts illegally.
Okay, the radio has been removed. This radio is valued at $1,419.24.
Because there isn't much to slow the car thieves down now. 4,300 cars a day are stolen and stripped down somewhere in America. This caddy was worth $35,000 in illegal parts, $14,000 more than when the cars all put together. And it only took them 10 minutes and 19 seconds to take it apart, even with stage fright. And that's our report on World News Tonight. I'm Peter Jennings. Good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
Tuesday, baby's on the way.
Raising a baby daughter is going to be the most wonderful experience of my life.
She must have lost a lot of blood.
Roseanne. Then, Room for Two's being called the sitcom for the 90s.
This is the life, kid.
And it's the highest rated premiere of any new show this year.
This is big, huh?
Linda Lavin in Room for Two following Roseanne. Tuesday.
When I bought my Ford Ranger, nobody told me it could tow 2,600 pounds more than Toyota. So how did all my friends find out?
Thanks for helping us move, Chuck.
Maybe that's why it's the best-selling compact pickup in America. Ford Ranger, prepare to be impressed.
And right now you can get a Ford Ranger loaded with all this for just over $9,000. It's a special deal available only in this area and supplies are limited. Hurry to your Ford dealer today and prepare to be impressed.
Check this out. Ouch! I'm sick of dating. You gotta fake it. So much madness, you just can't take it. Hey, don't go through this. I know what feels good. While the best thing's always so misunderstood. Just give me what the doctor ordered. Just what the doctor ordered. Hey, give me a Dr. Pepper. We want it. Whoa, just what the doctor ordered. The taste is made to order. We love it. Dr. Pepper now.
When severe weather hits, Channel 5 will warn you first with the Guardian Lightning Tracker. It's the latest forecasting technology from Channel 5's team of professional meteorologists. The Guardian, only on Channel 5.
Cloudy with flurries this evening and temperatures in the 30s.